The United States and Iran ended up in the same group for the World Cup. And with that, we had many US soccer fans asking how much they know about Iran and how much the media knows and how much YouTube channels know. And honestly, we all don't know much. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Community TV, and welcome to another World Cup video where today we're going to go through Iran, and we're going to solve this whole issue of not knowing much about their national team. For this video, our special guest is Arya Alaverde from GolBezan on YouTube, a UEFA B licensed coach, Iran soccer expert, and someone great to chat with. You guys will see throughout the video. We will do a deep dive into Iran here, the national teams, see how the US men's national team should approach this game, their strengths, their weaknesses, main players that we should keep an eye on, and much more. So now let's bring Arya into the channel. Make sure to check out his channel. Actually, the link is on the description. And let's talk about Iran and the main event of the year, the FIFA World Cup. All right, Arya, did I say it correctly?
Yes, you did.
It took me a while, guys, to learn this, but thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about Iran, right? And there's a lot to talk about because a lot of the US soccer fans, we really don't know much about Iran's national team. I'm just going to be straightforward with you, for example, with myself. The last time I really watched them was 2018. That was the last time. And I think that's common among most of the fan base because we don't watch much of the Asian qualifiers, and we have a lot of questions in regards to what we're about to face, especially after the 2018 World Cup, which you guys gave Portugal and Spain a run for their money. So first of all, thank you very much for being here. How you doing?
Thanks a lot for having me on, Filippo. I really appreciate your time. It's always great to speak about the World Cup and the national teams, and there's a lot of excitement from the Iranians, for qualifying for the third time in a row, first time in our history. We've got a very exciting group. And we're looking forward to going to Qatar in November, and in 2018 we got a lot of respect from the way we played against Portugal and Spain, but this opportunity of playing the US and England, two massive massive countries in terms of reach worldwide, Iran having a good performance against the US, against England, could be huge for their image to the entire world.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be quite fair, it's the same for the United States, right? We still have a long way to go in soccer, so we need to perform as well at the big stage, which is the World Cup, against all these opponents. So it's the same for both. But going right to it, let's say, oh, not let's say, we literally sitting down here and talking about Iran, and I haven't watched them since 2018, as I said, besides my own research.
Yeah.
Throughout World Cup qualifying, how would you describe this new Iran side? You guys got a different coach from 2018. What is the style of play, formations that you've seen that are very common? I'm asking you, what should I expect from this team in the World Cup in terms of way of playing?
Well, I think some things have changed under since Kiros's time in the 2018 World Cup. We, by all accounts, you could argue we were quite a defensive team in that tournament. A lot of that was because of the opponent, of course. The opponents we had, very tough. We had to be defensive. There wasn't any other choice. And I think that's the kind of image a lot of people have of Iran, that kind of defensive style of play. Nowadays, in this last couple of years, lots has changed. We've obviously had a new coach, Dragan Skocic, who's tried to implement some attacking elements to the team. He's tried to bring in new patterns of play to kind of score goals. The problem really is that we do become quite over reliant on our top strikers, Osmond and Taremi. We're always trying to get the ball to them, and trying to ask them to do something for us, instead of really the rest of the players taking the initiative and trying to make things happen. We're trying to put all of it on the shoulders of our two strikers, which ultimately has worked in qualification because the opponents are not so strong. Osmond and Taremi can basically get the job done for us and just score the goals. Where I see that the issue is when one of them is missing, when they have missed, it hasn't been as fluid. We haven't been able to create as many chances, and we've even come close to not getting a good result. We lost players against South Korea recently. We lost 2-0. I think we were missing five or six players for suspension, injury, COVID-19, and as a result of that, we really struggled in that game. And it could be down to many things: lack of depth, just not able to get the best team out there. So a lot of it comes down to having our best players available.
So Taremi that you talked about is the center forward for Porto,
Yes.
right? Yeah, so he's definitely a player that we're going to talk about soon, that U.S. soccer fans should keep track of him the next few months, because he's been absolutely fantastic at Liga NOS, or Liga NOS, the Portuguese league. But with that said, so in World Cup qualifying, this is one question that I have. Iran in World Cup qualifying, they got the results done against every single team they faced, besides South Korea, which, if I'm not mistaken, you guys tied a game and lost a game. You just mentioned one of them, you were missing 5 to 6 players, which makes sense, and that can happen in the World Cup. We could be missing players.
That's actually a point we made in our podcast as well, that it could happen because players are going to get COVID. It's basically in one city,
Suspensions, injuries, and the World Cup is also the games are so close to each other that sometimes a small injury is enough to keep you out. So with that said, my question to you is this: 2018, we talked about how Iran was quite impressive in the World Cup despite not making out of the group, but because of the opponents they faced. Are you uncertain of this team right now? Because they struggled with South Korea, which is the other World Cup team from your group that made it. But you went through opponents that you called it yourself. You said that these opponents were weaker, because in the United States, we did get the results with Mexico, but we didn't get it with Canada. And a lot of the opponents we faced are what we consider lesser opponents. They're weaker than what you face in the World Cup. Does that have any doubts in your mind, or you're certain that in the World Cup, this team will be ready to face these squads of the United States, England, possibly Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine, depending on which one is? What are you feeling right now as a Iran fan?
For me, as I've been saying this before, the most important thing for Iran between now and November is to prepare themselves properly. Is to play as many friendlies as they can against good opposition. Because as far as I'm concerned, the qualification was not preparing Iran for a World Cup. There's no doubt about that. We didn't.
Can I say one thing? Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
U.S. soccer fans switch Iran with the United States. That's the same thing. The World Cup qualifying doesn't prepare. You need to face opponents that are like England, for example. We're going to face England. None of us faced an England side in World Cup qualifier at that level. But sorry, go on.
And the reason why I didn't really speak about formations and like how we play is because I can't really tell you how we play, because ultimately when we're playing against weak teams, all we're doing is just winning matches. We're not actually doing anything that's like specific. I can't point something out and say that's how Iran are playing. That's the identity of the team, because there's nothing really there. Ultimately, we're just winning games and scoring goals. That's really it. There's no game plan, and that comes because ultimately the opponents are not offering you anything in return, so you don't need to have a game plan. You know what I mean? You don't need a game plan to.
You just out talent them. You just
go and play. That's all you do. You just go and play. So I'm not here to criticize anybody. If you're a coach and that's the opponent you get, that's what you're gonna do. You're just gonna go out and play. But I feel like there could have been more planning for long term involved, and even with that weak opposition. And I think that's kind of not happened with this national team. We haven't been able to nail down a certain identity going into November. That's what the planning between now and November is for, is can we organize good for now. I don't have a lot of trust in the Federation of Iran to organize good friendlies. That's my opinion. And I don't think that it's going to be as easy as some other countries who would find it a lot easier to prepare their countries. Iran don't normally have that ease for many reasons. And I really hope that it does happen, because I think if this team does prepare properly, a lot of good things can happen, because there's a lot of talented players.
Now, one question to that too, because you guys were under Carlos Queiroz in 2018. Now, I'm sorry, what's the name of the current coach?
It's Dragan Skocic.
Dragan Skocic. So I've talked to some Iran fans, and they seem to prefer Carlos Queiroz. It seems just that that's almost unanimous between Iran's fan base. But here's my question: Carlos Queiroz, since he left Iran in 2018, he didn't get the job done in Colombia. It didn't work out well. He went to Egypt, and clearly it didn't work out well as well. I don't know how much he is in Colombia. I followed a bit more, and there's a lot of blame on him for sure, and people are not happy with it. But in Egypt, I didn't follow as much, but he didn't win the AFCON and he didn't qualify to the World Cup. So that's a failure.
It came close though. I mean, if you lose on penalties to Senegal, who are the best
I know there's
African
luck
team,
involved, and
yeah,
African qualifiers are they're just nasty to qualify the way that it's done. They put Senegal and Egypt to face each other. It's just,
yeah,
but anyhow, technically it was a failure there. In Colombia, there's no excuses. I believe he was the coach when they lost to Ecuador 6-1.
yeah. He didn't have a good time there. I just don't think it worked for him in that setup at all.
But my question to you is this: so, do you think the team right now is worse than 2018?
Individually speaking, no, we're definitely better personnel wise. We're a lot better. Not only are we better personnel wise, the guys who were good back then are better now. Like Taremi wasn't even playing in Europe when he was in 2018 World Cup. He was playing in Qatar, and he was walking on the pitch and scoring goals. That's how easy it was for him. He wasn't even getting challenged in Qatar, and he was actually getting worse there. To be honest with you, when he moved to Portugal, he's on fire. Like I think he's probably top 20 strikers in the world right now. He's unreal. Like his talent level is raised so high since going to Portugal. Osmond, a lot better than he was then, in my opinion. He's scoring a lot of goals now. Maybe not as much today because of his move to Leverkusen, but even at Zenit, he was doing really well. And then players like GolBezan has really raised his level. A lot of guys like Majid Hosseini in defense, who's now doing quite well in Turkey. We've got a lot of players doing well, and they're also improved their careers in terms of the destination of where they went. Some players have regressed for sure, like Ansari Fard, like Haid Safi, but those are experienced players as well. So
where are they playing the experienced players nowadays?
So Karim Ansari Fard, who was at 2014 World Cup as well, he's playing in AEK Athens with Haid Safi as well. They're both at the same club. There's also Jahan Bakhsh, who's one of the captains. He was also at the 2014 World Cup. He's at Feyenoord in Holland, in Netherlands.
Man, you guys are gonna give me a hard time. You know of what? Pronouncing all those names.
Yeah, well,
I gotta learn it.
You gotta learn it. Get on Google Translate. There's a lot of players who have got good experience now as well. As I said, they've beaten three World Cups or 2 World Cups in a row. So I think the team is better personnel wise, but to answer your question, are we a better team? A big question mark there, because I don't know. I really don't know. We're not challenged enough to answer that question. I think under Queiroz there was a plan. Maybe the plan, some people didn't like the plan. Some people said the plan was too defensive. It was too safe. But there was a plan. There was something that the team had, an identity. That's what the team was known for. Now, I don't know what the team is known for. Not to say that makes us better or worse, but that's where my question mark is. When your team doesn't have something that they're known for, or they're the way they're aiming for, then there's always a question mark as to, are you prepared for a competition to play against teams who have that? England have a way of playing, for sure. The US, maybe not as much, but they still are building towards something, with their youth. Scotland definitely have it. Wales definitely have it. Ukraine, maybe less so.
This group is looking like the group of death of coaches, because everyone hates their coach now.
Yeah,
it looks like.
Yeah, I think actually I was speaking to a couple of US national team. A lot of them are comparing Skocic to Greg Berhalter, who they're saying he's not as high level of a coach that the national team wants to have. So
Yeah, so with that said, one thing I want, because I did want to hear your perspective on Carlos Queiroz, because I'm Brazilian American and I follow Commonwealth qualifiers, and Carlos Queiroz' reputation down there after the Colombia work wasn't that good. But I was seeing Iran Twitter and some fans, and they really seem to like Carlos Queiroz. So I was just
yeah,
like, what did this guy do there right that he didn't do here right? But I kind of
yeah,
understand what you mean. It's also different, right? Colombia, uh, you're not going to play very defensive with Colombia. Most of their strength is in the offense. So maybe that's just not what Carlos Queiroz is about.
well, for Iran, he started at ground zero. Colombia was already at, like, they were already up there. They're one of the top nations. Iran, when he joined us, we were very, like, we were down here. We'd not qualified for a World Cup before, in the 2010 World Cup, and we just struggled. We're not in a good place. He brought us out of something that we never thought we'd get out of, and he developed Iranians in a way mentally that just drove us to another level.
Why did he leave?
His contract ended, first of all, after the Asian Cup in 2019, and the federation didn't want him back. That's the reality. I mean, they won't admit that, but they didn't want him back because he was a guy who as a coach wasn't just a coach. He did more than being a coach. He would speak out against the federation if they didn't provide the right friendlies or training camps. He would really fight for his team in the media if he had to, and the federation didn't want that. They got tired of, I suppose, having someone who's not a yes man. They wanted a yes man, and they brought in Mark Wilmots, who was a yes man, but he was a terrible coach. And then they got this guy, Skochichu. I think he's actually worked really well, but he has to work in the limitations that they give him.
So now moving on in the video here, if I am a U.S. soccer fan, which I am, I go to you and I say, look, tell me 3 to 4 players that in the next few months I should keep an eye on them because they could surprise the United States in the World Cup when we face each other in November. Actually, December. We play in the early December. So what would be these 3 players? Say their names slowly so I can catch on to what it is, where they play in their position. What's your player number 1?
3 or 4?
Go give us 4. Give us 4.
Okay, we'll give it 4. Okay, so the first player we've already spoken about is Taremi, Mehdi Taremi. He plays in FC Porto. He's done really well in the Portuguese league the last few seasons. He's a player who is very unorthodox as a striker. He picks up really strange positions. He does things that a striker wouldn't normally do, but he's very clever. He gets himself in areas of the pitch, especially in the box, and he puts defenders under a lot of pressure. He wins penalties out of nothing. Like, honestly, he's a genius at winning penalties, and I think defenders have a lot of hard time trying to find his, trying to find his movements on the pitch. He's a very impressive striker. He scored that fantastic goal against Chelsea in the Champions League. He's very unorthodox, and I think he can be a big weapon for Iran in the World Cup for sure.
Look at these stats here. I decided to pull it up after you mentioned, just so viewers can get a perspective. Is
that Transfer Market, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. So look at this season: 27 games, 15 goals and 12 assists in the Portuguese league. That's 1 goal contribution per game. That's amazing.
Well, I will add the 12 assists is probably wrong. So those assists are probably, a lot of them are probably 1 penalties. I think Transfermarkt normally if you win a penalty, they'll put it as an assist as well. But it's still great.
That's fair. I mean, it's all, I know it's not really an assist, but at the same time, earning a penalty is you created that goal, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And then if you go to 2020, 2021, 16 goals, 15 assists, amazing in 34 games. And then you go to 2019 and 2020. He wasn't at Porto. Where was he playing there?
He was at Rio Ave.
And he scored 18 goals in 30 games and still had 5 assists, and that's probably why Porto even signed him. So
that was his first season in Europe as well.
Impressive. And who's your second player? Because this guy is a no-brainer. He's
Yeah,
one of the
for
best
sure.
players there in the group. Who's the next
Yeah.
guy?
Well, Sardar Osmond, who was at Zenit up until the January transfer market, he moved to Bayer Leverkusen. He's, in my opinion, our best number 9 in terms of scoring goals. He's the fourth all-time leading goal scorer for Iran. Period. He's of all time. I don't know how many he scored quite a lot of goals. I don't know how many he scored. I think it's like 60 goals, something like that. Maybe less. And he is a very good player in terms of getting in behind. He reminds me a little bit of Inzaghi. He really likes to get in behind, make things happen. He's also very, very proficient in the air. His heading ability is very good. His leap is, in my opinion, probably his greatest attribute in terms of getting in the air and being able to head the ball. But I think most importantly for Osmond is his experience. He's been in a lot of Champions League matches, scored against some top teams like Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, etc., etc. And obviously he was at the last World Cup, didn't score, but was played a key role in a defensive phase. He was one of the first pressers of the ball for the national team. He did it very effectively. Actually, I remember against Spain, he was marking Busquets in the Spain game, and he was doing it very, very well. So he's got a lot of elements to his game that are very important, but hopefully his career can progress this season in Germany.
So he's playing for Bayer Leverkusen, and so probably when he faces the US, since Greg always goes with a 4-3-3 with a 6, he'll probably be the guy pressing Tyler Adams right there.
Yes, for sure. I think he will be the guy who will try to limit the backwards play from the US. Trying to force the US to go forward to ensure that the Iranian team can win the ball back. As fast as possible.
And his name is Azumu.
Sardar Osmond.
Osmond. Got it. I need to learn to pronounce. That's why I'm asking. But who would be now? These are definitely the two more known players. Who is your number 3?
Number 3 is Said Izzatullahi. I'll say it again, Said Izzatullahi, a player who was previously at Atletico Madrid in Spain as a youngster. He played in the youth academy, moving there at 16 years old. And then from Madrid, he went to Rostov in Russia, where he was joined when he joined Sardar Osmond as well there, and he moved to a few clubs like Amkar Perm and Reading, and also he went to Belgium at Eupen, but now he's playing in Al Gharafa. He's on loan from a Danish club, Vejle Boat Club. He's a player, in my opinion, who reminds me of the aforementioned Sergio Busquets in terms of his ability on the ball. I think he's probably one of the best players we've had, technically speaking, for 15 years. He's unbelievable talent. He has everything you really want from midfielder. He's got a height. He's 6'3", really big frame, great passer of the ball, can shoot from distance, left foot, right foot, defends well, heads the ball. He's got everything in his game. Just he lacks a little bit of fitness. He lacks I don't know how to explain it. He lacks the grinta, as the Italians call it, to go out there and show that every single week. I think he needs to.
He's not consistent.
Not consistent enough. He gets injured too much. He doesn't maybe train to the highest standard we want him to. Kind of similar to Pogba in a way. In the sense that he's got everything, but we don't see it all the time. But he's so important to our team. In that kind of number 6 position. He, in my opinion, if he finds himself again, the way he was playing in Reading in England in Championship, he was unbelievable, but he got a really serious injury. If he finds that form again, I think he can be one of our best players in a long, long time, even better than Taremi, in my opinion, in terms of talent level. Not in terms of numbers, but talent level, he is right up there.
Okay, and that's your 6. Now, going to player number 4, and the last one we'll talk about here. Just before you go to player number 4, I'm going to ask you something that I wanted to ask in the beginning of the video. What's the nickname of Iran's team? It's Team Melli?
Team Melli, yeah. It just means the team of the people, I suppose, or the team of the, Meli means all,
Okay,
team of all, team for all, something like that.
got it. Now, what's your fourth player?
The fourth player is a centre back by the name of Majid Hosseini. Now, I kind of would have him and Hossein Kanani, who is also very good in our qualification. But Majid Hosseini is a player who was at the previous World Cup in 2018. He came into that World Cup with 2 caps, and he started the game against Spain and Portugal. And he was unbelievable in that game. In both those matches, he came with 2 caps. I think he was 21 years old. Actually, he played on his birthday against Spain, on his 21st birthday, and he was unbelievable. From there, he moved to Trabzonspor in Turkey. Had a couple of seasons there. Had a couple of on and off seasons. He didn't have a great time, especially towards the end of the previous season. He got sold to Kayserispor in Turkey. Now he's playing in I think it's maybe mid-table team, maybe top in the mid-table in Turkey. Kayserispor, who he's done really well this season. He's a player, in my opinion, who helps us a lot with his passing range from the back. Didn't play a lot in qualification, actually. He didn't actually play. He only played the last few matches. A lot of that was down to the fact that the coach preferred Khalil Zadeh and Kanani, the other 2 centre-backs, who did well. But honestly speaking, I'm really surprised that Hosseini didn't start at all in those matches earlier on, because looking at the last 2 games, even against South Korea, where we lost, he was very impressive for us. So I'm expecting him to get good game time this November. He's a very good young centre back, and we have a lot of high hopes for him in the future.
Okay, to wrap up the video here, I just have one quick question, and this is a very quick one. We all expect England to go through in the group, right? England are the clear favorites. They're a level or 2 above every single team in this group. Even if Wales, Ukraine, or Scotland, whoever makes it, England is definitely the strongest side. We expect them to go through, even though in the past they've struggled with many different groups. Number 2 in this group right now, is there a team that you think is clear, or you think it's just, honestly, anything's going to happen to these teams?
That's a good question. If Scotland qualify, obviously you can hear from my voice, I'm from Scotland as well. If Scotland qualify, I'd hate to say it, because obviously I'm from Scotland. I don't want to be, I don't want to speak against the country I'm living in, but I don't think Scotland have what it takes to compete in the World Cup. I just don't have. I don't think they have enough, to go out there and compete against countries who've been there and done that, in my opinion. If Ukraine or Wales qualify, I think Wales will cause issues for Iran and USA. They're a very strong team. I think the favourites to finish second really will come down to who gets the points from England. If they all lose to England, which could happen, then it comes down to, could be goal difference, it could be anything. Really, I think USA, Iran, and let's say Wales or Scotland, Ukraine, any of those teams can fight for second place, but it will come down to, in my opinion, very small margins.
And US and Iran face each other in the last game of the group. So this is actually quite interesting, because I was going to ask you, how would Iran approach this game? And even if you ask me, how's the US going to approach this game? It's going to really depend on the situation, right? Let's say Iran comes into the game needing a draw to qualify. They might play more defensive against the US and go in transition. Maybe if the US has a draw, maybe the US will be defensive and attack Iran in transition. So that we can't really predict until we see the results.
Right. Well, yeah, but I think ultimately, I think, to be honest with you, I think the US national team have a pretty solid team individually speaking. Very good personnel, players playing in great clubs around Europe. I always question, do they have a striker?
We don't.
I don't think they do.
No.
And I don't think Iran will be too worried about, if they're going to go and attack, are we going to concede that many goals from the US? Maybe, but, they'll I think I think that risk will be taken. I think that they'll take a risk to go out and attack against the US if they need to. If they don't need to, then as you say, Iran can sit back and sustain a bit of pressure. For the US national team, Iran have 2 top strikers. And God forbid, touch wood, if they don't get injured or get COVID-19 or something, those 2 players can really put US national team defenders, whoever Zimmerman, Richards, Brooks, whoever plays at the back for the US.
Yeah, I don't think
Those
Brooks
guys,
will be there. Greg
maybe
doesn't
not
like.
Brooks because of the whole
Greg doesn't
Portugal
like
thing.
Brooks.
Yeah. But I think maybe Richards or if it's whoever it is playing, they will have to be on their P's and Q's because those guys can create chances out of nothing. Having said that, I think where the US could potentially have a little bit of success, and maybe Iranian fans listening will maybe hate me for saying this, but I'm just trying to be a good analyst here. In the midfield, Iran are a little bit weak in terms of their pace. The speed of play is not there. They could cause issues there, but at the same time, maybe Iran don't need to have that. If they just sit back in defense, they can just bypass the midfield and just defend. So a lot of it will be tactical. It will be a very back and forth game between the US and Iran.
Our midfield can most certainly implement pace when you put Yunus Musa and McKennie.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
I was on the podcast with Jimmy Connor. I was saying, they asked me who is the player that you think would affect Iran's performance. I said Yunus Musa could really affect Iran in the midfield, especially the fact that we have Izzatullahi, who I just mentioned. He's lacking some fitness, so that could be an area of the pitch where they could try to impact. But at the same time, Iran, could just, as I say, they can just sit back and defend. So they might not even need to do that. They can just create a block and just say, the midfield isn't even going to be there for you to even get past. So a lot of it will come down to how they approach the game.
Arya, thank you very much once again. It was awesome to learn more about Iran. We'll most certainly be inviting you more and more as it approaches, because as you said, a lot of things can happen in terms of players emerging, injuries, etc. Thank you very much. And guys, don't forget to check out his channel. The link's on the description, as I did do on the intro. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. And any final thoughts before you go?
No, I just want to say thank you to you. Hopefully we can have you on our podcast as well. I want to just appreciate your time, and look, all the best to all the teams going to the World Cup. Let's have a good competitive tournament, and I hope that Iran do qualify for the second round.
Iran and the United States, England out.
Yeah, England. I'm from Scotland, so if England don't make it to the second round, I'll be very happy.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.